Morning, Grapes and Peas. So I have another fun story for you. Last week's story was about how Jesus was friends to little children. This week's story is about Jesus making friends with somebody else. Maybe somebody else that people didn't expect him to be friends with. In fact, the name of the story is The Man Who Didn't Have Any Friends. None. He had no friends. But Jesus was friends with him? Let's find out. There once was a man who didn't have any friends. None. Do you have any friends? Well, of course you do. I have a few friends. Oh, but not Zacchaeus. Poor Zacchaeus didn't have any. Do you think he was a happy person? Probably not. You're probably wondering why he didn't have any friends. Was it because he was short? That's not a reason to not like someone, but I've heard he was short. Was it because he had a name that was hard to say? Well, that wasn't it either. Even though he was short and he did have a funny name, that wasn't the reason. No, people didn't like Zacchaeus because he stole their money. I wouldn't like someone like that either. Zacchaeus collected taxes. Taxes were what people had to pay the king. But Zacchaeus, he took more than he was supposed to and kept the extra money for himself, and it made himself rich. Everyone knew that what he was up to, and it made them cross and grumpy, and they didn't like Zacchaeus one bit. So they made sure he knew it by doing things like avoiding him and walking on the opposite side of the street and pretending not to see him when he was around and whispering things like, "There's that nobody who thinks he's a somebody," loud enough for him to hear. You see, there's Zacchaeus and everybody's pointing at him. Anyway, one day a huge crowd gathered by the road. Who do you think they were gathering around to see? Jesus was coming to their town and everyone wanted to see him. Zacchaeus wanted to see him too, but everyone was too tall, because remember, Zacchaeus was short. He tried jumping up and down, but that didn't work. He couldn't see a thing. Luckily, Zacchaeus had a good idea. "I'll climb that sycamore tree," he said. So he did. He was surprisingly good at climbing trees for a man who was so unusually short that he had to take a flying leap just to get into his chair in the morning. Do you think that's really true? But look, there's Zacchaeus trying to look over all the tall people. From the tree, Zacchaeus had the perfect view all the way down the road. Another minute and suddenly Jesus was at the tree. He stopped and he looked up. Zacchaeus saw Jesus, and Jesus saw Zacchaeus. "Zacchaeus," Jesus said, "I'd like to come over to your house." Zacchaeus almost fell out of the tree. Come over to his house? No one ever wanted to come inside his house, much less anywhere near it. Look, there's Jesus seeing Zacchaeus up in the tree. Actually, it says no one ever wanted to come anywhere near Zacchaeus' house, let alone inside it, and now Jesus did. The people saw this, and needless to say, it made them even crosser and grumpier than usual. They mumbled and murmured and muttered, "Why is Jesus being kind to that big sinner? Doesn't Jesus know about him?" Zacchaeus scrambled down the tree, took Jesus to his house. He was in a big hurry because he didn't want Jesus to change his mind. Perhaps Jesus hadn't heard about him. Perhaps Jesus didn't know about how he had been stealing and how nobody liked him and how he didn't have any friends. But Jesus knew. He knew all about Zacchaeus and the stealing and everything, and he still loved him. Zacchaeus was ashamed. "Lord," he said, turning pale, meaning like losing color in his face, "what I've done is wrong, but now I want to do the right thing. I'll give the money back to everyone, 4 times what I stole." Whoa. And that's just what he did. Jesus smiled. "My friend," he said, "today God has rescued you." Jesus loved Zacchaeus when nobody else did. He was Zacchaeus' friend even when nobody else was, because Jesus was showing people what God's love was like. His wonderful, never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. Wow. And that's what Jesus' love is like for us too, because sometimes we're not a good friend. Sometimes we're not kind to others. And you know what? Jesus loves us first before we do anything. And so that's why this is such a great story to remind us that Jesus loves Zacchaeus for who Zacchaeus was, not because of the things he did, good or bad. Jesus loved him first. All right, guys, next week I have another fun story for you, and we're going to stay in the Jesus Storybook Bible next week, but I'll talk to you next week. Bye.